Buongiorno a tutti, sono Jens Hans, Investor Relations del gruppo Hera.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jens Hansen. I'm the investor relator for Hera Group. Welcome to our presentation for the financial year 2024. We apologize for the delay, but our board meeting only ended 10 minutes ago. And I'd like to give the floor to our executive chairman, Christian Fabri, who will begin the presentation. Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. I also want to apologize for the 15-minute delay, but we had several items on our agenda, meaning that we were slightly delayed. Our intention is to organize this presentation with you following the board meeting, just to help you understand, have a better flavor of the figures we published. I'm supported by the usual team, Jens Hansen, our CEO, Orazio Iacono, and Massimo Vai, our CFO. Let's begin with the year result presentation, which we approved this morning during the board meeting. And these results fully confirm the strategy that we had already explained during our business plan that we've been working on for years now. We want to create growth that generates value, a growth which taps into the growth we also posted in 2023. When we met last year to comment those results, we mentioned that it was the biggest EBITDA growth ever. And this year, we have had the biggest growth in profit in the company's history. And of course, all of this is due to structural activities which also offset certain opportunities that are no longer, such as the eco bonus that we saw in 2023. Now, this growth leads us to a constant dimension in terms of EBITDA, EBIT, and net profit. As far as EBITDA is concerned, we have grown by 93 million euros compared to the previous year. And this is a constant growth, which also happens on the EBIT level. On the one hand, we've had an increase in the investments, something that we've been developing over the past few years, with the increase in amortization, which was offset by a reduction in accruals, also due to the reduction and the normalization of the energy scenario, which again allowed us to offset things with a growth on EBIT worth 89 million, which brings us to the 893 million, which are the 2024 results. As far as net profit is concerned, we stand at 447 million compared to the 348 million last year, with a 98 million euro growth, which is almost 29% in terms of growth year on year. But the reported growth brings a further 48 million euros in terms of growth. Which aren't mere accounting figures. These 48 million euros, like the 27 million last year, are due to Ascopiave's removal from the Est Energy accounts, and that allowed us to save some money compared to what we were expecting to pay, a total amount equal to 75 million, and that's something that we had already booked, and therefore that allows us to free up some cash in a coherent way. Now, if we look at the levers that allowed us to grow in terms of EBITDA, this is due to structural growth, as I was mentioning earlier, and we can see some positive contributions from all business lines: energy supply, waste, and our networks. All three business areas offered a positive contribution. And this, of course, underscores the quality of our portfolio and our ability to use different levers, allowing all of our businesses to grow within the portfolio. The main growth happened in networks. As you know, we benefited from a recovery in tariffs, both in terms of WACC and inflation, which began in early 2024, following the growth that we had seen, both in terms of the cost of debt and in terms of the inflation that was linked to costs. And therefore, we've seen a very good opportunity. Moving on to the following page, we can see the way in which this growth is linked to value creation. We have an overall TSR worth 36%. In the reported elements, which becomes 33% if we consider the recurring items. And therefore, overall, our EPS moves up from 24 to 31, whereas the reported one goes up to 34, which allows us to confirm the dividend policy that we had already announced during the business plan presentation and following the forecast regarding 2024 figures. So we have a 36% TSR, which I think is a figure which perfectly describes our desire to create value, which is in line with what we had said during the business plan presentation. Now, moving on to the various businesses, as you can see, the presentation is fairly streamlined. That's also a way of leaving you enough space for Q&A. A very important topic. We wanted to continue talking about sustainability with a sustainability budget. The two types of figures have now been blended due to CSRD commitments, and therefore you have a flavor here of what we intend to do in terms of creating value. We want to create shared value, the value which leads to benefits in terms of sustainability. Now, the shared value has grown by 14% CAGR ever since we began monitoring shared value in 2016. We now stand at 24% of the group's total EBITDA. And as you can see, it grows much faster than the EBITDA growth, because roughly 90% of the growth that we have developed over the past 9 years, during which we've been measuring these elements, is in fact sustainable growth. And that gives us an idea of the dimension we have reached with the end of the financial year. Now, moving on to the various businesses, we want to confirm the things we had said during the business plan presentation. We are reaching year-end with 4.6 million customers, which gave a good contribution to value creation. And as far as EBITDA is concerned, as you can see, with a 23 million euro growth, we were able to offset the 80 million euros that expired with the end of the eco-bonus and the value-added services, with a 104 million euro growth in terms of organic growth. So we have an 18% structural growth, which in this area of business brings us to 672 million. As far as customers are concerned, as I mentioned, we stand at 4.6 million customers, And we've seen an inverted trend. We now have more electricity customers, whereas gas customers have gone down by slightly less than 100,000 customers, whereas we've had an increase of 900,000 electricity customers, which includes STG customers, but we've also had part of those customers who have gone to the free market, plus our commercial activities that were able to offset the churn. Let me give the floor to Orazio, who will be talking to us about the waste business and the networks. Thank you, Christian. Good afternoon, everybody. As far as the waste business is concerned, let me begin by giving you an overview of our business here. And numbers in this business prove the fact that this is indeed a very interesting business. We are more and more focused on transforming waste in a fully circular approach. This is something very tangible, very pragmatic. We are growing in terms of circular economy, and we want to continue growing. We want to continue creating value thanks to our very large and modern asset base. As you know, we have over 100 different waste treatment plants. In 2024, we were able to strengthen our leadership very much with a further organic development of our presence in the special waste market. This is especially important given the context in which we're seeing a slowdown in industrial production, whereas we continue to grow in a very positive way. This is due to a number of plants that we have began running already in 2024. Others still will begin functioning in 2025 and in the future. In 2024, we had the F3 plant in Ravenna, which focuses on hazardous waste. We also have the TRS plant that we acquired in 2024. And then, of course, we have the ACR company, which we always mention very fondly. The ACR company is a company we made the acquisition of in 2023. They focus on soil remediation. And we've been working on their traditional customers, but we've also been reaching out to large corporations. The TSR company focuses on solid and liquid waste for large corporations. This was a challenging year, but we were able to continue in our organic growth. And also in 2024, we had an M&A transaction, the TRS Ecology company, which I mentioned earlier, which is a smaller acquisition, although it's a strategic one, because that company operates in an industrial district where most of the Italian market is concentrated. And for us, this is a routine transaction, as you've seen in recent years. And we will continue to focus on M&A in a highly fragmented market. Recently, in fact, we signed the acquisition of Ambiente Energia from the Marzotto Group, a company which focuses on liquid waste. This constant evolution of ours towards an increasingly circular business allowed us to reach year-end 2024 with the completion and the launching of the new plant to regenerate carbon fiber, which is a one-of-a-kind industrial plant in Europe. And it continues to allow us to innovate and to promote short and circular value chains, which is something that Italy and Europe need very much, given the scarcity of raw materials. On page 6, we have a summary of what we were able to achieve in terms of numbers and results. We've seen a 4% EBITDA growth. We now stand at 367 million. All of our managed activities contributed to this number. We have the collection of waste, which achieved a €2 million growth, which may appear to be a small figure, although there's plenty of work behind that number. We've had inflation recognized, plus we've also worked on efficiency in terms of operational costs, which is something that we will always continue to focus on. And we also want to continue expanding in value-added services, which is something that we offer in our local territories and which is starting to give us some very visible results. And now that we have gone beyond the beginning of the concessions, the initial phase in concessions, we're starting to see long-term period results, which are based on long concessions, 15-year concessions that we were able to obtain following the tender process. The lion's share, of course, refers to the free market activities, the treatment and recycling activities with a plus 11 million figure. We've had an increase worth 8% in special waste, which was achieved for the most part by expanding our market share, with the acquisition of over 250,000 tons of new special waste, with a stability in prices, which have proven to be resilient even on these levels. And on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see that on urban waste and special waste, despite a slight decline in urban waste, which can be referred to the floods we had in 2023, which we were able to overcome willingly. But then we also had better results both from industrial waste and urban special waste, which means that we were able to grow in all segments referring to special waste. So the growth we're seeing in 2024 is even more precious because it is entirely organic. You know that we operate in a highly fragmented market, which will continue to offer a number of interesting opportunities to grow externally, and together with our financial flexibility, will allow us to have a very promising future. Moving on to the networks business, on page 7, for a very long time, we hadn't seen such a good year. Let's take a look at the figures we were able to obtain. We grew double-digit by 11%. As you can see, our networks currently stand at €519 million in EBITDA. The networks business is the biggest contributor to the group's growth. And this overall growth is, as Christian was saying earlier, the outcome of the WACC review. It is due to the development investments we've made, which have led to a growth in RAB, and something which is always present in our figures is efficiency through the use of technology, innovation, digitization, and therefore we were able to extract efficiencies to counter an increase in inflation and costs, and due to the regulator's decisions. As you can see from the graph here, all of the networks contributed to our growth, the only exception being district heating. But in this case, there is a work in progress by the authority on tariffs here. As we had already mentioned earlier, we have had an increase in water being the main business, thanks to a RAB, which is now worth €1,940 million. As you can see on the right-hand side, we've had a growth in water worth 26 million, which was also due to the increase in WACC and by the growth in RAB and by the recognition of inflation in revenues, which more than offsets the increase in operational costs and the request for more efficiency by the regulator. As far as the gas networks are concerned, we've had a growth worth €12 million. which is driven by the increase in the WACC and by the growth of our RAB, mainly due to the investments we made through the digital meter rollout. As you know, we invest on our smart meters to be able to measure consumption in real time, and therefore we're focusing on an increasingly digital and flexible network. Finally, electricity distribution. We've had a growth worth 18 million, which is also driven by the increase in WACC that we have had in 2024, leading to a growth in RAB. And besides the small inflation recognition, in this case, we have the new ROSS system, which contributed to the results posted by the electricity network since 2024. This network is one we continue to invest in. We invest in our hosting capacity to increase our available power and also to strengthen our main networks, to interconnect them and to have bi-dimensional networks, allowing us to accept generated distribution. In a nutshell, therefore, when it comes to networks, we have invested very much, allowing us to develop the RAB, especially in the water network, which, as you can see, is the largest chunk on the screen. But in fact, we have invested in all of our businesses, in all of the group's businesses. So thank you, and I'd like to give the floor to Massimo Vai now. Good afternoon, everybody. As usual, let's look at the evolution of our cash generation. 2024 was a particularly positive year. Let's look at the various items. We had the operating cash flow, which generated a cash generation worth of 1.148 billion. Last year, we had generated 940 million, which means that the company generated a further 210 million in 2024 compared to 2023. Now, compared to the figure that we had shared with you in September, we have added a further 150 to 160 million. Apologize, over 300 million, which brings us to 1.148 billion. Now, the net working capital absorbs cash worth 183 million. We used to stand at 261 in September, which means we had an improvement in the cash absorption and in managing the net working capital. To that, we also have to add the updated provisions, which brings us to maintenance capex, which has a value worth 563 million, which brings us to a free cash flow worth 357 million. Following that, we have the development capex worth 248 million. All in all, therefore, the group has invested 811 million minus contributions compared to 780 million last year. So even in this case, we have increased our commitment to investments. Moving to the right, we have to take into account the dividend distribution, which is something that you were already aware of in September. Then we have the expenditures for M&A, and then that extraordinary item, which is worth 555 million, excuse me. Which means that all in all, we had an increase in debt worth only 136 million compared to the figures for the previous year, with an improvement worth over 200 million compared to the view we had in September. So things are very positive indeed. Our expectations are very positive. During the Q3 presentation, you had asked me what was our outlook for the net financial position, and I said that we stood at around 410 million, more or less, also taking into account the market conditions and the seasonality of things. As you can see, we improved those expectations slightly, which is, of course, in line with the visibility of our financial projections. Moving Moving on to the graph on the right-hand side, you can see that the net debt to EBITDA ratio
ulteriormente migliorato il già ottimo valore dell'anno scorso, siamo
is
a
even better than
2,5
the great results we had in 2023. We stand at 2.5 times. Of course, this result was influenced both by the good performance on debt that I mentioned a minute ago, but it's also due to the good economic growth performance, which we saw throughout 2024. My colleagues who are familiar with our track record when it comes to the net debt to EBITDA ratio have pointed out how this is the best result we've had in our 20-year history. So this is a very positive element indeed. Moving on to the following slide, let me just comment the cost of debt here. In 2024, the cost of debt, the medium to long-term debt, stands at 2.8%. It should be 2.76%. We've rounded the figure up, which is reduced compared to the figure we had in 2023, despite the fact that the interest rates in 2024 was higher compared to the average interest rate in 2023. What impacted this element? Well, certainly all of the debt rationalization activities that we began in the second half of 2023. You may remember that on the 13th of April in 2023, we had a sustainability linked bond, and from then on, we started to reconsider our exposition to bank debt that we had used to deal with the events in summer 2022 and winter 2022-2023. At that point, we repaid the debt, and in September 2024, we recovered the EIB line that we had used the previous year. We also tried to use the remaining cash available whenever there were opportunities to offset the financial burdens. Without ever compromising, in fact, strengthening our group's financial resilience vis-a-vis the company's need to continue having a constant and a competitive amount of financial resources for our industrial development, but also to support our business plan. And we always wanted to keep under control our ability to act in a swift and flexible way with consolidated banks were there to be any short-term cash absorption needs, which didn't happen in 2024. Nowhere near what we saw in 2022, but things can always happen, and therefore we're always equipped to deal with those instances. So from this point of view, I think we can be very pleased with the results we've obtained. As you know, in January this year, we launched a new green bond on January the 8th with plenty of interest on the market. Our overall yield was slightly below 3.4%. But since we have a temporal expiry of our bonds worth some 500 million euros per year, this cost only has an impact lower than 10% on the overall average cost. And even when it comes to the year 2025 and the future, with a view to the interest rate trends that we'll be seeing over the next few months, our intention is to continue to hover around this reference. As far as the makeup of the debt, the mix between variable and fixed interest rates, we are very resilient because, as you can see, 97% of our medium to long-term debt has a fixed rate, which means that it isn't influenced by variation in interest rates, and only 3% is variable. And then on the right-hand side, we have a summary of what our qualitative and quantitative numbers are. And as you can see, our Standard & Poor's and Moody's ratings brings us on the same levels of fully regulated businesses, whereas, you know, As you know, we have a mix between regulated and liberalized, which again confirms our soundness and the low risk profile for a company, which at the same time can continue to offer some very good level performances. Back to Christian for some conclusions. Thank you.
Beh, devo dire abbiamo visto, diciamo, penso buoni numeri che danno una
I'm sure you'll agree with us that the figures are good.
dello sforzo verso
And
la
the numbers, I
creazione
think,
di valore
give you a
quale stiamo
flavor of the effort we've
partendo,
made to
sicuramente
create
il
value.
primo step
This
del
is
piano
the
industriale che
first step
parte
in
bene
our
anche,
business
diciamo,
plan. We're off to a good start.
prima con un
And
livello
as Massimo was saying earlier,
flessibilità finanziaria
we have a
tra i più
financial
bassi degli
flexibility,
ultimi
which is
20 anni
certainly among the
della nostra
lowest
storia. Quindi
over
partiamo
our
bene,
20-year history.
la generazione di
Therefore,
cassa
again, we're off to a
nell'anno è
good
stata
start. The
positiva
cash generation during the year was
quindi
a
ci ha
positive one,
consentito di mantenere questo buon
and
livello
therefore we were able
di
to maintain
indebitamento e di
a
flessibilità finanziaria.
good debt
Come
level
sapete,
and a good level of financial
ci teniamo
flexibility, which,
per
as you know,
lo sviluppo del
is
piano,
something
parte l'abbiamo già
we want
allocata,
to use for the
parte
development of the business
possiamo
plan.
allocare on top in
Part of that
funzione
flexibility has
di
been allocated
potenziali
already,
opportunità che
and
potessero arrivare, come
we can
ben
continue
spiegato
to
nella
look to
presentazione del piano.
using that
Quindi
flexibility for any possible
on track
opportunities, as we
rispetto
explained during
al
the business
piano,
plan presentation. So we're
facendo
on
questo primo
track
step
as far as our goals are
di
concerned.
attività,
We have taken the first step,
una considerazione penso positiva
and I think that
sull'andamento.
we can
La
have
domanda era cosa farete nel
a
2024
positive
a seguito di questo buon risultato. Sicuramente
view for what still needs to be
la
done.
domanda verrà anche oggi, cosa vi
Last year,
aspettate
you
per il
asked us what we
2025. Come
expected for
sapete, noi non abbiamo
2024. I'm sure you'll ask
guidance
us
al
what we
riguardo,
expect for
ma abbiamo appena
2025.
presentato
As you know, we don't give any
un
kind of
piano
guidance on that,
industriale
but
che aveva
we
una
did
curva
present a business plan, as you may
del per
remember,
share che
with
continuava a
an
crescere. Quindi
upwards
questo
curve in
è,
terms of
diciamo,
EPS,
il
with
riferimento e quindi continueremo
constant
ad andare
growth.
avanti in
So
questa
that's the
direzione per questa logica di
reference,
continuare
the
questo
benchmark
percorso
we
di
have in mind,
creazione di valore.
and we want to continue to
Bene, noi
grow and
siamo
to
stati
create value.
come diciamo, da
As we had
tradizione ormai da qualche sessione molto stringati nella presentazione
promised,
proprio per lasciare
we
voi lo
tried to
spazio
keep our
per le
presentation
approfondimenti e
short
le domande.
to give you some time for Q&A.
Buonasera, ingegnere Fabbri.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fabri.
Javier Suarez,
Our first question is by
Prego.
Javier Suarez, Mediobanca.
Sì, salve, buonasera a tutti.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Ho notato durante la presentazione che avete
During the
fatto
presentation,
molto
I noticed that
leva sul discorso del financial solidity and
you
flexibility,
focus
no?
very much on your financial solidity
Chiedevo
and
se potete
flexibility.
elaborare un po' in
Can
quella
you
direzione,
elaborate
perché 2,5
on
volte
that?
adesso vi dà
Because
è un
2.5
punto
times
molto
net debt
basso
to
con rispetto
EBITDA
alla
is
storia della
very
società
low
stessa, e
compared to
quando
your
il
company's
presidente
track
parla
record.
di
Now,
utilizzo del
when the
flexibility,
chairman
vorrei
says he wants to
aiutare
use
a
flexibility,
capire qual è l'optionality che
can
la
you
società
help us
ritiene da parte per
understand
utilizzare
what options the
questa
company
flessibility,
has? What options do
che è un
you see to
asset.
use that
E
leverage,
in
which
questo
certainly is an
contesto
asset?
mi interessava,
And
so bene che la società non
in this
dà
context,
guidance, no? Ma mi
although I
interessava
do know the
sapere
company doesn't give
cosa vi
any
aspettate
guidance,
nel supply
I
business,
wanted to know what
soprattutto
you expect from the
nell'electricity
supply
supply business,
business,
nel gas supply
especially in
business,
the electricity and
e
gas
penso che
supply
per l'anno
businesses.
2025 dovrebbe essere
In
un
a
anno
year,
particolarmente
2025, which should
difficoltoso
be
per l'electricity business, no? Per
especially
l'impatto del
tough
cooling
for the
fan dei
electricity
clienti
business,
che
given
sono
the
stati
full impact
mossi del mercato a maggior
on the
tutela. Come
clients which
pensate
moved
che
from the
potrebbe
major
avere questo
tutela
effetto
market. How do you expect to
nel
offset that effect
2025?
in
Mi
2025?
interessava sapere
Uh,
sul working capital
And as
evolution,
far
la
as
soluzione
the
200
working
milioni di
capital
euro.
evolution,
Ci
the
potete
200
aiutare a
million
capire
you mentioned, can you
cosa è
help us
dovuta
understand
e
what
quale
that
dovrebbe
figure
essere
refers
l'evoluzione della
to
working capital absorption
and
nel
how
2025?
you expect to
E
see
la
the
ultima
net
domanda
capital
è del
absorption in
contesto,
2025? And my
ovviamente
final
nel
question
budget per il
refers to the context.
2025
In your 2025
si
budget,
ha dato mandato a Hera per estendere o
do you
determinare
expect
le condizioni
ARERA
per
to
l'estensione
extend
distribution
the
concession.
electricity distribution
Potete
concessions?
fornire la
What
vostra
conditions do you see
view
there?
di quale potrebbe essere il platform payment per una società come Hera collegata
What is your
all'estensione
view
di queste
for a company
distribution
like
concession?
Hera
Grazie.
when it comes to the extension of the electricity distribution concessions? Thank you, Javier. Thank you for the questions. Let's take them one by one. Financial solidity and flexibility. Now, for the business plan, we've already allocated part of that flexibility both for the organic investments and for M&A. As you know, we included 700 million euros for M&A. That's something that we are already partly working on. As for the IMAG transaction, as you know, we signed the deal in January. We're looking at a number of other files, but that's the call it ordinary amount we look at. We have already increased our investment plan, and including M&A, we stand at 4.6 million. So part of the plan already includes using part of the leverage all the way to 2.8 times, which gives us some further flexibility we can use both on the organic side of things. And this brings me to your fourth question on the electricity networks. Were there to be the opportunity to spend in that business, it's a remunerated business, and therefore we could do that. We haven't included that in the business plan. And it could be done for organic growth and for M&A as they are approved. As you know, M&A is part of our tradition. It's part of our strategic vision. We usually look at M&A linked to our business areas, and the goal there is to create synergies that can allow us to extract value from the M&A transactions with multiples that are acceptable compared to the multiples Hera is traded at, with no dilution. That's what we've done in the past, and it's what we intend to continue doing in the future, so that we can use the flexibility we have, because, as you know, flexibility allows us to take advantage of opportunities on the market. And in fact, if you look back to the deal we signed with Ascopiave to acquire their customers, when we signed that deal, we were able to then extract synergies. We were able to achieve overall growth. And we were also able to save compared to the initial estimate we had made, the 75 million euros that we were able to save between 2024 and 2023. That is a reduction in our financial commitment that we can use elsewhere. When it comes to the supply business, and specifically the electricity supply business, the more relevant things we'll be seeing in 2025 will be the reduction of the salvaguardia market, which we were able to win for the 2-year period, but we saw some lower numbers compared to 2024. And that is linked to the forecast we already included in the business plan, which is the normalization of the opportunities, which gave us a major boost in the past, and which we are normalizing over time. This year, we offset the expiry of the Super Eco bonus and the last instance markets, and we'll continue in this direction next year. As far as the STG market is concerned, we will be seeing some higher impacts for sure, because we have had a reduction in customers, but we'll have a further 6 months. So we feel we'll be able to offset those numbers with the evolution of the market, which is part of our development forecast, in fact. As far as the evolution of the electricity networks are concerned, we'll have to wait and see what will happen over the next few hours. We expect to see the consultation document published by Hera, which will define the ways in which the extraordinary plans will have to be submitted so that the concessions can be extended for a further 20 years. So we'll just have to wait and see what the document will include to see what assessments we will have to make on the topic. I don't think ARERA will say anything about the CapEx contribution that we will have to consider for those concessions to be extended. Late last year, there were rumors regarding 6 to 7 billion. And of course, if that estimate is done in a linear way, that would mean 50 to 60 million euros in an overall effect for us. Then, of course, the government will have to decide, and we'll see what their decision will be. Obviously, due to the way in which it was defined in the budget law, this element will then consider a full remuneration as if it were an investment in material assets. And therefore, these are extra investments that we will be making, which will increase the RAB. This year, the electricity RAB grew 50 million euros due to organic activities. And if this were the case, we won't be growing by 50 million. We'll probably grow by something more than that as the amount of the contribution. So this isn't a criticality. Since we will continue having that remuneration-based approach. Massimo, do you have anything to add regarding the net working capital? Obviously, the projection regarding the net working capital is a more complex one, given the company's size. This year, our turnover was worth 13 billion euros, and therefore the changes in net working capital can be influenced by a number of different parameters. And given these, the amounts we're mentioning, it can change very much. Having said that, if we look at 2025, what we're seeing is we don't have any specific volatility elements. We closed the year 2024 at a better level than we were expecting. So that's an element that we certainly take into account when it comes to our forecast for 2025. In 2025, we also hope to include the acquisition, the integration, and the consolidation of IMAG. So we'll have to see how that will have an impact on our net working capital. In the meantime, what we're continuing to do, and that certainly is an element which contributed to the improvement of our performance in the last quarter in 2024 compared to September, is the activity we began a few years ago, which we're continuing to optimize, which is the acceleration of the time lag between invoicing and cashing in. And that has benefited us at the end of the month, of course, and that translates into a better availability of the cash and lower amounts of pending credit at the end of the period. In a nutshell, therefore, the outlook is pretty stable, following a year in which we had a marginal absorption, 580 million, which, given our size, isn't anything significant. And it was a year last year in which the CCN gave 520 million, whereas the previous year, you may remember that we had two variables which we had to consider in 2022, which were the energy price and the gas storage activity, which we did back then, which then released net working capital in 2023. And we don't expect to add a further 1 million customers next year, and therefore an increase in CCN. As far as M&A is concerned and our development activities, I'm sure you do see a trend. As we were saying earlier, the IMAG transaction is on track on track when it comes to its execution. And as you know, the waste business is the business area with the most opportunities. And as you have seen, every 2 to 3 months, a new opportunity appears in that business, and we tend to choose companies that are a good match for our platform. As Orazio was saying, we have a very large asset base, and we always look for the right opportunities to add to our asset base and to add to our businesses. And we always look to cross-sell, to increase our customer base, and to reach out to new opportunities in the waste business. Thank you very much. The next question is by Emanuele Oggioni, Kepler Cheuvreux. Thank you and good evening, everybody. I also have a few questions for you. Going back to what our colleague was asking regarding your outlook for 2025. As usual, you don't give us any guidance, but can you just better outline the moving parts? You mentioned a negative. You were mentioning that for the entire 12 months, you'll be losing customers for the gradual for the safeguarded market, but that will be offset by other elements in the supply business. Can you give us maybe the moving parts in the various business divisions? And also referring to the energy supply business, I seem to remember that in late September or early October 2025, the last resort customers that you are managing will be expiring. That's for the gas last resort market. So can you just remind us what assumptions you have regarding what success rate you expect to have? And then moving on to the waste business. In 2024, there was a good increase in volumes, especially when it comes to special waste. You increase those volumes by 4%, and even the EBITDA in that business grew by 4%, which means that the margins were protected very well. Even despite the small acquisition you announced. But focusing on organic growth, what do you expect for 2025 in terms of volumes and therefore also in terms of EBITDA? Do you expect the growth to be in line, higher or lower? And then as far as your fiscal credits are concerned, could you please remind us what you're still left with? If I remember correctly, it's 200 million euros per year for a 2 to 3 year period. Thank you. Thank you, Emanuele. Well, as far as 2025 is concerned, as I was saying earlier, I think the theme for 2025 is the reduction in the last instance market. We'll have something slightly less in the salvaguardia market. As far as the tenders are concerned, as you know, we just look at the opportunities out there. So we didn't embed those opportunities in the business plan, and we'll just have to wait and see what conditions the tenders will offer. And how interested we'll be in that specific business. So we'll just have to see how the market evolves and what the market conditions will be in that given moment in time. And as that can only be an on-top opportunity, we don't include that in the business plan forecast, as you know. As far as the electricity business is concerned, as I was saying earlier, we'll be offsetting the increased investments in STG through market developments, and therefore we're fairly confident in that case. And we will continue to work to increase our presence on the market as a way of offsetting a part of that margin that we will be losing on the last instance market. On the other businesses, the moving parts are positive on all businesses. What about the waste business, Orazio? Hello, Emanuele. Well, as far as the waste business is concerned, let me begin by saying that Italy's undercapacity is a competitive advantage to us, given the things I said earlier, given our ability to treat any kind of waste, be it solid or liquid, hazardous and non-hazardous. Plus, there is another thing which is something we're very pleased with, which is the good reputation we have vis-a-vis our larger customers, our large industrial groups. They look for an outstanding partner such as Hera. Earlier this year, we launched the circular yard with Fincantieri, allowing us to manage the waste coming from their 8 shipyards worth 100,000 tons of waste. So as far as the industry is concerned, as we've already said in other conference calls, we're very much present in the oil and gas business, in oil and gas waste, of course, which is something very positive for us. It's anti-cyclical compared to other industrial sectors. Then we also look at the food industry, the healthcare industry, both of which are very positive for us. And we can guarantee our presence there thanks to the asset base we have, thanks to the plants we have. Think of the F3 plant and a number of landfills we own, such as the one in Feronia, which allow us to close the loop. Then we have TRS, which we'll be seeing for the entire year. Then we have Ambiente Energia, the contract for which we recently signed with Marzotto Group. And then, as far as organic waste is concerned, compared to 2024, we will have less downtime in our waste energy plants, because as you know, in 2024 we had 2 longer stops, which we don't expect to have this year. And that is an organic growth that we expect to be able to achieve in 2025. So basically, we expect 2025 to be in line with the growth trends we embedded in our business plan. In a nutshell, the amount of fiscal credits as at December 31st was slightly below 700 million. Our target was roughly 600 million. We have postponed 100 million towards banks at the beginning of this year, which is something we'll be completing over the next 2 months. So adjusted, the target value was 600 million. We've had a slight delay. At December 31st, we stood at slightly above 700 million. As far as the moving parts are concerned, I didn't go back to the topic of the IMAG deal. Of course, we expect to close that deal early in the summer, so that the consolidation of IMAG is a moving part you're aware of, which will give a major contribution to our year results. The next question is by Francesco Sala, Banca Akros.
Buon pomeriggio, grazie per la
Good afternoon,
presentazione.
and thank you for your presentation and for giving us this opportunity. My first question refers to the gas supply business.
Volevo capire meglio cosa è successo nella
I'd like to have a better understanding of what happened in Q4 with a very positive results, even compared to last year.
Diciamo, non esattamente ricorrente che ha influenzato il dato.
Is there any non-recurring element which had an impact on the figures, which were much better compared to Q4 the previous year? Second question, also on the gas supply business. Between Q3 and Q4, there was a reduction in the number of customers.
I driver di questa diminuzione.
What were the drivers behind that reduction? And finally, regarding the electricity supply business, what are your most recent figures concerning the churn rate?
Numero di clienti che
And
rientrano,
are you seeing
passatemi il termine, maggior tutela, visto la riapertura
a
della,
large number of customers going back to the maggior tutela market, given the fact that that deadline was reconsidered? Thank you.
Grazie, stavo scrivendo. Allora,
Thank you. Yes, I was taking note of your questions.
supply Q4, supply Q4,
As far as supply in Q4 is concerned, well, usually the fourth quarter tends to have a larger growth compared to the other quarters of the year. So we usually expect to see growth in that specific quarter. And at the end of the year, things went slightly better compared to the previous year due to some opportunities we saw at the end of the year, and that will drag on into 2025 as well. And then it was a slightly colder year compared to 2023. So those are the elements we saw. And then the other element, which I think is something we saw in the gas market in 2024 compared to 2023, is the full recovery of shaping costs, which had a higher impact in 2023, which continued all the way to the end of 2023. But now we are seeing the normalization of our contracts, which we've explained a number of times already. As you know, our contracts now include a pass-through linked to shaping costs. And then we've also seen a normalization of the energy market. We did see an increase at the end of the year. But something which used to be a source of concern in terms of shaping costs was the volatility, which led to 50 or 60 euros per megawatt hour on a daily basis. And that in turn led to a higher shaping cost. That no longer happens, and it was something that we were able to fully sterilize in our contracts. Then we also had a few customers which left us at the end of the year or during the summer, and we saw that impact in Q4 2024. Now, as far as the customer base is concerned, as far as the number of customers is concerned, that number declines slightly because some of those STG customers are outbound. It's a normal churn rate that we were expecting. At the end of the business plan period, we were expecting to have 4.5 million customers generally. So it was something that we very much expected, and we are offsetting that by conquering new customers through our typical commercial channels, and we're also working to giving value to them through our good services, of course, but also through cross-selling activities and through a change in offers, which is something we usually do. Now, what we've seen in the first few months, as far as these new customers are concerned, is that they are very positive. They exceed our expectations compared to when we made the offer to them. So we're quite confident. This may be due to the Gusmeroli decree or due to the Bills decree. We may be seeing a higher number of customers on the STG market. That certainly is a value for us because in late March and early April 2027, they will be switched to the free market, and therefore they will automatically begin to generate positive margins. And the number of customers we're seeing there is fairly limited. So we're not concerned in terms of extra investments to be made in 2025 and 2026. The churn rate continues to be lower compared to the market average. Of course, I won't give you the exact figures because that is a commercial, it's a trade secret. And as far as the major Sicilian market, we've already answered that question. Thank you. The next question is by Davide Candela, Banca Intesa San Paolo.
Sì, buongiorno anche da parte mia.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. I have two questions, also linked to the supply business.
Di alto livello di contesto.
The first is more related to the context. There seems to be an increase in competition, so there may be higher pressure from competitors and lower margins, although we haven't seen that in Q4. Has there been a delay in this normalization phase? And if so, are you noticing that? Or do you think this higher competitive pressure will reduce participation by smaller players, giving you market opportunities for M&A deals? And also linked to that, I have a second question more linked to gas. You said that Q4, which is the coldest period of the year, gave you some good results in terms of volumes. Do you think that will be confirmed in 2025 based on what you're seeing? And are you in line with your business plan forecast in terms of volumes, or is that growth something on top of what you were expecting? Well, in fact, we've been seeing increased competition for the past 20 years. When we began our commercial activities, we had 700,000 customers with a churn rate which at the time seemed huge, and it was very limited. And despite the increased competition of the years, we have continued to grow. Obviously, the more players you have on the market and the more investments and pressure you have on the market, the more competition increases. Obviously, when it comes to the small and medium-sized players, what you were saying is true. What I mean by that is that the more the competition, the more structures you need to manage your commercial channels and to manage more complex offers, and of course, the quality of CRM. 20 years ago, the levels were very different. All this requires investments, meaning that the smaller players on the market, as you know, there are some 600 players on the energy and gas sector. Their business model is that they want to continue being a small boutique offering services to a limited number of customers. But for the medium-sized companies, it becomes complex to hold on to their market share because they have to equip themselves with systems that can compete with the larger companies. And our growth over the years has allowed us to make major investments in all of our structures and all of our IT platforms. So that is the effect of competition. And then the impact of the weather on Q4, that gives us visibility on a single quarter. In early March, we thought that the warm weather had already arrived. In the more recent days, it has been colder, so we're switching back and forth. Figures regarding heating systems are intermittent. It's complex to manage. But what we've done over time is we have been able to reduce the variable margins from customers
distribuzione si è molto mitigato.
and
Siamo
therefore,
in una logica di 5 no, forse 10 anni fa è chiaro che il margine
we've been able to mitigate
cliente
things.
gas
5 to 10 years ago, the margins from our gas customers was variable for the most part, whereas nowadays,
di consumi che anche per l'efficienza
also
energetica
as a way of
via riducendosi,
taking
questi
into
margini
account the consumption
con componente fissa
cycles,
più
which
rilevanti hanno
are
un
changing,
impatto meno sensibile e meno reattivo rispetto
we now have a
all'andamento
lower
del consumo.
impact and a lower reaction compared to the consumer or the consumption trends. And when we develop the plans,
specifica per clienti,
we take into
eliminano quelli
account
che sono gli
specific
scenari
customer
di
consumption
consumi
developments, which are in line with the
efficientamento, di riscaldamento e di elettrificazione dei
efficiency,
consumi.
heating,
Non a
and
caso siamo
electricity,
poi andati su
electrification of
consumi
consumption trends.
elettrici, per cui
And in fact, we've shifted
tendenzialmente quello
towards
che si sta
electricity
verificando è
consumption. So
magari
what we're seeing
inverni abbastanza miti,
is we
ma
have fairly mild
estati molto
winters,
torridi, quindi questo
but
switch
with very
verso
hot
clienti
summers.
elettrici
So the
sì,
switch
più che
towards
compensa,
electricity
diciamo,
customers
la
allows
volatilità
us to
che
more than
abbiamo
offset the
sul
volatility
gas e
that we're seeing in
tendenzialmente la
gas
somma dei due
due
abbiamo
to the
visto nel
weather.
tempo è
So
abbastanza stabile e
all in all,
compensativa,
over
in
time, we've
questo modo
seen a
riusciamo a
fairly stable
manipolare tutti quei
situation,
volumi che entrano
and
in
one
una logica di
business
elettrificazione dei
offsets the
consumi.
other.
Quindi
But again, we're moving
anche questo
towards the
passaggio
electrification of
diventa
consumptions, and therefore
nel cambio dell'approccio e
we
dell'attenzione
have
che
seen
abbiamo
a change in the
al
approach
cliente
we have
elettrico e alla crescita di questi clienti.
towards our electricity customers and the growth in the electricity customer base. Thank you.
Abbiamo un follow-up di
We have a
Emanuele Oggioni di Kepler
follow-up
Cheuvreux.
question from Emanuele Oggioni, Kepler Cheuvreux.
Grazie, scusate, giusto prima mi ero dimenticato di
Thank you, and I had forgotten a question
gas distribution.
regarding gas
Immagino
distribution.
sicuramente siate interessati a partecipare
You
alle
are surely interested in
chiamarle, insomma, degli asset che
the
ha
tenders, the bids for
mandato di vendere da Italgas 2i
the assets that Italgas, 2i, and Ritegas will have to sell. We know that you are interested, of course, but are you interested in the assets in the core regions you already operate in, or in the neighboring regions? But would you also be interested in buying a larger chunk of assets in other regions, in other parts of the country, since you have plenty of financial flexibility? Would you be interested in the entire set of assets? Would you be interested in other regions as well? I'm smiling because we usually make our announcements when we complete the deals, whereas what you're referring to is a mere teaser. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see what will actually be offered, and we will talk about this in the future. But going back to your question on the moving parts, I think that we've seen an increase in the RAB this year. So this increase in investments, the increase in the RAB worth 250 million, which we will continue to strive towards in terms of growth, even in 2025. If I remember correctly, we were expecting to have a 1 billion euros in terms of investments for 2025. So we'll be seeing an investment peak, which will further increase the RAB. So that's an effect we'll be seeing both in terms of EBITDA and in terms of the bottom line. So I didn't answer your question, but I integrated my answer to your previous question. I think that's fair. Mr. Fabri, there are no further questions. All right then, thank you very much for joining us today. We were expecting to have a 1-hour presentation. Thank you very much. All the very best. And we will continue to work to allow the company to continue growing in 2025. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.